Onko tää päällä? Joo. Aloitetaanko? We start. Okay. We have here our guest. And first I have to tell you that my English isn't perfect, so I'm sorry. But we have our guest here, Strömquist. Welcome.
Thank you.
And also I have to tell that I didn't sleep last night, and that's why I don't find any words with and when I'm using the language I don't know so well. I don't have the words anyway, and then I only have like 10% of my words right now to use because my brains are not sending them to me. So I have to ask you when I forget a word, and you will help me. And now we have your new books here. They just came out yesterday or today. Yeah, so they are brand new. I just saw them on paper today. And then, would you like to tell something about these? So.
Yes, these are two books. This is my latest book. It's called Norso and Tuho. Oh, sorry for my Finnish. In Swedish, it's called Uppgång och fall. It came out in Sweden last year. When I made this book, I felt I really wanted to address really big questions that I don't think that we talk about enough. I wanted to make some political satire that was really critical to the whole world system and not only small symptoms of this system. So I felt that it was, I wanted to learn more. I think that the neoliberal world order is controlling very much about of the power of the world, and its power is increasing, and more money is going to people who already are very rich, and all this kind of things. And we are using a lot of natural resources because we want it constantly to be what do you call it? Like growth. So we have to have constant growth, but we don't have endless natural resources. So this is like a problem for us who live in this era of capitalism and neoliberalism. So this is a very huge problem for humanity, but we like almost never discuss it, like in the mainstream media, like this big paradox of our economic system. And so I really wanted to make some comics about questions that address the problems with capitalism and also with the climate change and so on. So this book was trying to make this. Every time I talk about it, everyone thinks like, this is very heavy, this is very serious, this is very boring. And I have to say, like, but it's also like a funny comic, but it's difficult to believe. But
maybe we can talk first about this and then come back to this. Yeah, I think too. It's not. It's heavy, but the way you did it, the way you tell the not really stories. They are not stories like traditional comic stories. More like an article or something like that. And then you have, I found it really funny that you have was it here? Like note you can cut out, like or something like that. With all this information you get, and then there's a small cut-out note to put to your wallet that you remember. Was it here that remember the class?
Yes, I think that we've been talking too little about the class, the social class. So I had the little note class, and you can cut it out and put it in your wallet. Yes.
So the style which you use, it's at the same time funny, and it's but still serious, or not serious, but the things you are discussing are serious, but the style isn't. I really like that. Yeah,
thank you.
And you also use people who are actually existing, like persons who are famous and rich in here, and also in the other book. Have you got any feedback afterwards, after publishing, from this?
I've not really. I was in this book. I am like in the first comic. I am naming like 3 very famous. They are not very famous. I think it's very interesting because like the leaders, the top leaders of big corporations are always quite invisible, and they're not very famous, and they live their lives very like they're not in the media, and but they have like a lot of power and a lot of money. I had 3 examples of old men here who have had very high positions in the corporations in Sweden, and all of them deny climate change. So they are like they have like, for example, there's the former head of an oil company who was responsible for the biggest leak of oil in the Mexican Gulf. His name is Karl-Henrik Svanberg, but he's quite unknown, but his effects on this planet is very big. And he also said that he does not think that climate change is a big problem, and so on. So, but it was very funny. I was in a Swedish television show talking about this book, and then I was there was another. I don't know if he's known in Finland, but he's he's called Leif G.W. Persson. He's like a criminal. He's an old cop who is talking about, well, whatever. But he was looking, we were talking before, he's a writer as well. He's doing a lot of hunting, and he's hanging out with all these very rich, powerful men having the same hunting team. He was looking in this book, he's like, oh, these are my 3 best friends. I know. So, and he's like, I'm giving them this for Christmas.
And are they also in the cover of the book?
Yes, they are here. Because, I make a joke that they are like the spiritual leaders of Western society. So, yeah, some of them, yes.
Also, in all of these, your comics, you also use references, and also every time mark them that what academic research paper you use for the information. And I think that's something I haven't seen in comics. I don't know if any other artist is doing that. So where that comes from?
I think that when I started to make comics, I was studying at the university, and I was studying sociology and political science and things like that. And I was also writing essays that I had to do for my education. And then we learned how to make this reference, like this footnote. And I remember someone was asking the professor, but if you have come up with something yourself, if it's my own, because he said, yeah, to always have, like, every time. And someone said, but if it's my own thoughts, how can I have a footnote? And then the professor said, if you think that something is your own thought, that means you haven't studied enough. You have haven't read enough books because you never have an original thought. So maybe this is an inspiration that. But also, it was I was starting to do it when I was. Sometimes the facts that you find out are so bizarre. So like no one would believe it. Like I made this comic before, which is called Fruit of Knowledge in English, Kunskapens frukt in Swedish. It's about the sexual organ, and
I think we have that in Finnish. It came out last year.
Yes. Yes. And I found out very bizarre facts. For example, the man who invented cornflakes, Kellogg's, he was also a doctor. So the cornflakes was actually from the beginning some kind of medical thing, and some healthy breakfast that this doctor invented. But he was also very against masturbation. So he wrote a book about female masturbation, and he said that if to cure female masturbation, you should pour acid on the clitoris of women. This is actually what he wrote in his book, this Dr. Kellogg. And this fact is like, oh, this is so bizarre. Like, why would the father of cornflakes have written a book about trying to stop female masturbation? It's completely bizarre. So I have to have like a footnote, because otherwise people would think like you're making all this weird stuff up.
Yeah, that's true. That's good to have a footnote in that story. Also, maybe we can talk about this. Also, here you have people. It started with an interview with Prince Charles and Diana, or not Diana, but she's standing next to her husband. But also there's other Whitney Houston and Bobby Brown, and was it here this Swedish juontaja? What is juontaja? Hostess.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Tell us something about this book.
I was this book came out in Sweden in 2010 or something like that, and I think this book was there was at the time there was this movement, I think, in Swedish feminism, that there was a lot of women who were like kind of famous media working feminists, and all of them were in their 30s, and they were maybe before they said like the marriage and the heterosexual family is something that there can be a conflict, a feminist conflict about, but then all of them married and had kids, and they started to write texts about it was kind of becoming popular again to marry in a church, and kind of hyping again this more traditional family values. And I was myself like in an extremely like bad relationship, and I felt like, how can this be so good for women? Because I feel that there's a lot of things that are causing a lot of just pain all the time. So I decided to make a book that was like investigating the construction in the heteronormative couple relationship from a feminist point of view. But it's not only feminist, it's like a cultural trying to like look at how our culture is constructing couples relationships. So it's a lot about, for example, the idea of being why does it hurt so much, for example, when someone is sleeping with someone else, like outside the relationship. It's so it's from from a cultural point of view, like not a psychological point of view, just like trying to see how the society constructs these things. Yes, and why are we heterosexual? Why is there so much heterosexuality? For example, is the topic of the first comic. So yeah, it's. I was just reading all this very interesting sociological research about the subject, and I was like, wow, I have to really do something about. Like, I have to. I was so inspired by reading it, so it's like I have to tell it further. So this book is about that. Yes.
So is your reason to do comics, is it more like you want to tell other people, like, this is what I read and this is what I heard and this, or is it also that you really like to know yourself, and or you want to do the research, or is there something like more personal? You have to show what's wrong with the marriage, like if you have.
Yes. I think it's kind of always comes from some personal experience that you really have to, because otherwise you don't have the energy to make, like, or if it's some subject you don't really care about, or you have to, like, I think that this sounds like sounds a little bit maybe I don't know the name, pretentious, but it has I think it has to come from some kind of personal pain somehow. Most of because if you don't use your own personal pain, I don't think that you really have the energy to do it. So but I don't write like autobiographical things, but I think about feelings that I've had and like try to examine them like in different ways. So that's the case with with these books.
Yeah, it's not like a divorce book or anything like that, like in that way. But if you want to know the history of marriage or history of relationships, you should read it. If you want to know why it hurts that someone's cheating on you.
Yeah.
What is your relationship with the royal family? Because I haven't read these comics, I think, ever where was this much royalties. Because I read this. I don't remember. Was it Princess Madeleine? Was it in this one or in this one? In this one, and here is Princess Diana.
I have always been very interested in very superficial gossip and gossip magazines. So since I was a child, I always really liked to read these gossip magazines about queens and kings, and also about celebrities like Britney Spears or any other celebrities. So these are my two big inspirations: these gossip magazines and sociological science, and the mix in this. So it's but I think that when I write, because for example, I wanted to make a comic about abuse within relationships, and what are the reasons, that what are the forces that keep together relationships that are very, very abusive, but still they are impossible to break up. And then I just and when I make this, I was like, I think it also has to do with ideas, of course, that we have in our culture about romance, and that it's really tragic to break up and things like that. And So and I thought of the artist Whitney Houston and her relationship with Bobby Brown, and there was a lot of variety. She what do you call Amala report. She reported him to the police several times for beating her, but then she took back this report. It's very common to do that, and at the same time, she's a very big influencer worldwide of ideas of lifelong love, like the song "I Will Always Love You" and things like that. So we have this interesting clash of in this person, but the story is not about her.
Yeah.
I mean, the story is about I use them as puppets to just illustrate this paradox. And it's the same with Prince Charles and Diana, because I don't know anything about them. The story about Diana is only like the feeling of being left. So I just made like a diary, poet's diary about her being abandoned by Prince Charles. I have no idea how she felt. Maybe she was relieved. I don't know. But in this story, she's very sad. Yeah.
Yeah, that was a little bit different style of comic there, because there isn't there any text in this, or not so much as in other?
Yeah.
It's more about feelings.
Yeah.
Yeah, you like in this Whitney Houston story, you use these. They are more like symbols to some relationships, and Houston is like a princess, the pop princess, because they don't have the real royalties in the United States. And also here was the funny cut out note that you can cut out the picture of Bobby Brown, so you don't have to be sorry for him after the breakup, because he found a new one right away, new girlfriend right away. So you can cut out and always remember that you don't have to feel sorry for him.
Yeah.
So this was a little bit spoiler. You use quite a lot of text in your comics, and sometimes it's I wouldn't call them even comics, because there might be a page and there's only one picture and a lot of text. Is this something where did that come from? Or does it matter anyway? Is it a comic, or what is comic?
Yeah, it's not like I think that I more than the storytelling of a graphic novel where you tell a lot through pictures. I tell a lot through text, and I think that's just because I'm not that like. I think I'm not that like patient, and I don't like how this. I just like do it. Sometimes it can be just like in this case. I think it's kind of bizarre, because some parts are just. I just cut out photos and put them in like this, and this can also be because I just don't have time. So, because I'm very busy. I have 2 small kids, and I also think this is like a part of just showing that sometimes in your life you don't have time to be very. You don't have the time. You just don't have the time to do everything perfect. You just have to do it anyway. So it's also a style that can show a certain. Life situation. So I think when I get older, I will make very, very, very nice comics with. When I'm like a retired old lady, I will make very, very nice decorations and very complicated patterns and very beautiful comics. So in time.
But in a way, you can also think that you are changing the narrative of comics by doing this, that you are sometimes just using text or just using photographs or and in these stories there isn't like a beginning or end like in the traditional comic storytelling, or even characters like there sometimes there isn't the same character in every panel or anything like that. It's just like the main character is the subject you are talking about. I get that feeling from.
Yeah, and I don't know. I just I think also like I was when I started to make comics, I was very inspired by the punk movement and the do-it-yourself movement. And I was when I started to make comics, I was doing a fanzine. That was just like a small paper that I made myself. I think that the way I made it was also like what I felt really inspired by this thought that you don't have to be very good, you don't have to be very skilled at drawing, or you can do something very fast with a very hard message, and you just do it yourself. You just put it out. You don't try to sell it to someone. I was really inspired by this feminist punk movement in the United States, the riot girl movement in the 90s. I was listening to this Bikini Kill songs, and the lead singer of Bikini Kill, Kathleen Hanna, she was also doing fanzines. So she was that was also made of cutouts and text, and then maybe a drawing or a photograph or something like that. So the is, and also I think it's a matter of style. Like you make something that looks like it's made very quickly. Like you don't have to. So it's also about that aesthetic heritage. I think that that is part of this style.
Mm. But then I get the feeling that you use a lot of time for writing the story.
Yes, the writing takes a lot of time. So
you don't have time for drawing.
No, exactly. Yes. And this is When I started to publish comics in Sweden, this was a very big critique against me. So I was very scared, because when I just made the first book, I thought the message was very provocative. It was very feminist. It was very left wing. So I thought everyone is going to be really mad about this comic, but what everyone was mad about was, why isn't the drawings better made? How can you just make a drawing so fast and so ugly and not correct it? And how can you write so you can hardly read the writing? And so this was the main critique. But since then, I actually started to, for my second book, I started to use a ruler for the first time. So but when I was making the first book, I was living in an apartment. It was the beginning. It was just my own fanzine, so I didn't make it to be a book, and I didn't have a table, so I had to draw on the floor, and I had a mat. So it's very the lines were very much like this. Yeah.
But I think that tells a lot about the comic scene, that you get the critique from the drawing, but not from the writing.
Yes. Because everyone's just looking, this doesn't look good, and they don't care what it says. Yes.
It was the same from Marshall Satrapi. So you're in a good point.
Yeah. Oh, that's weird.
Yeah, I think so. For me, when I'm reading comics, it's I don't want to see just pretty pictures next to each other, and if it doesn't have anything to say. But maybe it's what they want them. Do you have any questions in the audience? You can ask.
I have a question.
Yes,
I would just ask about Dr. Bolaget. Were you in the beginning with them?
Actually, the Dotterbolaget is a feminist comic network that is in Sweden, and I think it's been actually it was formed in a comic school in Sweden, but I went to this school as well, but I was not in that year, so I had already graduated and I already published my book when this network was formed. But I know like a lot of people in this network. I share my studio with two of the people who have been really active in this network, but I haven't really been going to. It's also about like I think it's a very good idea, of course, to have like a network for feminist comic artists, but it's weird, like why am I not on these meetings? But it's also because I really like don't like to go to meetings, and so I always prefer just to work alone. But I'm really like, of course, supportive of this group. So it's really nice and really good, and I think it really helped like the development of feminist comics in Sweden. So yeah.
Yeah, it seems like the feminism is the biggest thing in the comic scene has been many years now in the comics in Sweden. It's not the same in Finland, but I just have to say that. I don't know if you probably don't know, but I'm also a comic artist. And I have to force my publisher to put on the back cover of the book when there was something about me there that I'm a feminist, and that was I think 2010 or something, and that I think there wasn't a lot of comic artists who said that they were feminists.
No.
And it's completely different thing in Sweden.
Yes, but actually it wasn't for not so many years ago. I think in 2008 or something, there was, when I was in this comic school in Malmö, there was a group of girls. Actually, they were like 1 year younger than this year, who formed this feminist network, Dotterbolaget. They wanted to form a feminist comics collective of 4 people. And then the teacher said, don't call it feminist, because then you will not get so many readers, and like it will people will not be interested in your comics if you say that it's feminist comics. So it was like that very much in Sweden as well. But and also like I think that some of the early generation of female comic artists in Sweden, they always had this question like, do you have a political message with your comics? Like, are you a feminist? Do you want like to raise awareness about women's issues? And they're like, I'm an artist. I just want to, make art. I don't want anyone to like label me that I have like some political statements. So they really try to liberate themselves from this idea that they should automatically have a political message. But then I think it was a difference with this a little bit younger generation. I remember my colleague called Sarah Graner. She's also a comic artist, and she got the same question from a journalist when she was very early in her career. He said, are you a feminist? Is this feminist comics? And she said, I get really flattered when someone thinks that this is feminist comics. So she kind of like made it into something that this is like a very good thing. If someone reads it and thinks it's feminist, I get very happy, because it feels like something really good, like a quality in the comics. So this was like a different approach to this word. Yes.
Questions?
Yeah, I would like to ask, you are also doing a podcast.
Yes.
So how did you end up doing that? When? And could you tell something about that?
Yeah, when I finished my first book, that was just a collection of my fanzine. This book, there were some girls who had, it was the same situation on the radio that was the same situation in the comics business, that it was only guys who were doing comedy radio in Sweden. So it was only men who was working in these shows. But they had this little experiment one summer. They would let 2 girls do a comedy radio show. And these girls had read this comic that I made. So they called me and asked, like, do you want to come in and just write scripts for sketches? And I don't know what it's called, like, write just for comedy radio. Because
if you don't know the words, you can say it in Swedish, and someone can translate it in English.
Yeah. What do you call a sketch? Like a small joke thing, like a joke play. Yeah. Okay, it's not very important, but and then because they thought that maybe the same kind of because there's so much text, so you can just read it and it will be like it could be on the radio. So I tried out and then I started to work there, and so I was. And then I just stayed and worked in different shows for a long time in Swedish radio, like, I don't know, maybe 5 years or something, working with comedy radio, different shows. And then I stopped working there for different reasons, just also because I was making so much comics, I didn't really have time. But then the podcast medium started to become very big in Sweden, so I was like, I miss doing radio, but I don't want to do it so much, and I don't want to have a boss, and so then it's very nice to make a podcast because you can decide yourself what you want this to be. So I have 2 podcasts actually. One is called En varg sin podd, and the other one is called Lilla Drevet. And the one is more about politics, and the other one is like more cultural podcast. Yeah.
Okay. I don't know how much we have
Sorry,
to.
I have. Yeah. You mentioned that the biggest critique for your first book was about the drawing, but were there big debates about the political message after that, or were some people really angry, or was it in the media, or like how was the reaction? I know that you got a lot of positive feedback, but was the outcome of some comics like public debates or something like this kind?
I'm actually very surprised because there hasn't been a lot of reactions, even though I was writing some very strong. The first book, I have one comic that is about charity, and this charity to the third world, where celebrities tell other people to give money to the third world. And then I had this very little drawing, and there was one person who said, you should just, instead of giving money, you should just give them weapons so they can make a revolution and kill their master, something like that. Very very strong words. I was like, can this be can you say this, because this is very some people would be really upset about this being in this book. No one said a word about it, so I so it's like some very provocative, so things that I've been very surprised about. And then there are other things that you wouldn't think that anyone would react to, that some people are getting very upset about. So you never really know. So it can be some very dramatic message. And then I think that with this book, there was some people who found this book quite provocative, because it's I remember being interviewed by a journalist, by a female journalist, and she was very upset. She was like, I am very in love with my husband, and we are very happy. We are very happy. And I'm like, yeah, I'm sure. I don't say anything about your relationship with your husband. She felt very attacked by some of the ideas, and so and also the book about the Kunskapens frukt that we showed. Maybe I can show some pictures from this book, because I made an exhibition in the subway in Sweden just now in Slussen, so it's very big, and some of the pictures are from this. And actually, when they asked me, they said, you can do this. We don't have so much money, so you have to take pictures that you can't, we don't have the budget for you to make new pictures, so you have to use work you already done. And I'm like, okay, I have to find things. So I just like, I took things from my books, and some of the things are, for example, this pictures of women with menstrual stains. And this caused a lot of reaction in the subway, so people were so they were like, oh, you're really trying to provoke people with this pictures. I'm like, no, they just, it was like the only big pictures that I had. No, I'm very honest, because I didn't think that it would be such a big deal, but it was a very big deal, and people, there was this like internet campaign on their Facebook where people are very upset. There was a lady who wrote, for example, a comment. She was like, I'm in the subway with my 4-year-old grandchild, and she's asking me, what is this red stain, and what am I supposed to tell her? You know? I'm like, tell her it's the uterus that comes an egg, and you know, like, just tell her what is the situation, why you can't tell this 4-year-old this. Yeah, so it's
also many times the people are worried that the children are upset about nudity, like
yes.
if they see,
Yes.
if a baby sees
boobs, yeah. The baby will be very repulsed.
I want to see that. Yes, that's really weird.
Yeah, I really like, her hope is like, I really want this menstruations to come as a total surprise to this girl. And she's 14 or 13, and she will think she's going to die and bleed to death because she never heard of this. You know, it's very weird.
But that's the way it used to be, like hundreds of years, so it should be like that.
Yeah.
The girls don't know what's going on.
Yeah.
Yeah. And also this idea of menstrual blood, that it's something that you should always be ashamed of. And you in this book, there's also about this, that it's something really shameful.
Yeah.
And still it happens to almost half of the people.
Yes.
You have a question? In your books, you talk a lot about things that which are wrong or should be different in our world, or some problems. Your ideal world, what is utopia?
I don't think that like the idea of utopia is very negative, because I think there will always be like happiness and sadness and you know, like progress and the opposite of progress and so on. So I don't know. I also just think that I really feel that fear that is like now controlling the entire planet, that there is that the corporate power is being bigger and bigger, and that we always aim for and that more and more things are put up to sale, like I don't know if it's the case in Finland, but in Sweden, for example, they have been privatizing the schools, the hospitals, the, you know, everything. So there's a lot of that you can, and the idea is that the market should control everything. And I think this idea that the only thing that is important is profit always. And it's an idea where you cannot. This idea that profit is the only important thing is not an idea that should, be the guideline of a society. I don't think, because it's. You can see, for example, now in the Trump government, I think like a very good way to describe this. This government is that it's like a corporate coup d'etat, said Naomi Klein called it a corporate coup d'etat because all of these people in this, they are very high up in different corporations. For example, the Rex Tillerson, who is the foreign minister, he used to be the head of Exxon, the oil company. And they have published like alternative facts throughout all the years that climate change is not happening, that the oil industry is not like a problem, and these people like and it's not to say like he's an evil person, he does something wrong. He's doing exactly the right thing, which is only thinking about his own profit, like the profit of his own company, and now he's also in the political power to stop all political efforts to. So this, I think, this idea has to change and be replaced with another idea, and that should be the idea of sustainability and economic equality. And I have like no idea like how will this happen or something, but I think this development is like truly really destructive and not good for humanity.
Yeah, and I think it also goes with not just the companies or schools or hospitals, it's also people and art, and everything should be like the useful. Like if you are not useful for society, you are nothing, or if your art is not
it's good to sell, or
or changing something or helping someone or something like that, and I think that that is not the reason why art should be done.
No.
Okay. So you have a lot of is it a reference when you use a picture of art or a sculpture or something? You have a picture of Gustav Klimt's The Kiss painting in your book, and the sculpture, the Pieta, is there. Why you use this? Is this like, because I know that some people don't recognize this.
Absolutely. And I also think this is a reason why my comics often have had like good reviews, because I like correspond to like a good taste of middle class, that some comics don't correspond with this, and they don't get viewed as good art in the same way. So I think this is very much. I have made a comic also about like being a white middle class artist, and the like the references you have, like that really corresponds to journalists who have this same references. So I think this is a very important point. My father was an artist, like he was making sculptures and pictures. He was not at all successful, but he was. But so we didn't have a lot of money when I was little. So. But we had what Bordia calls a cultural cultural capital, and which means that you talk about art, you know a lot about different things, you discuss, like you don't have any money, but you still go to the museum and things like that. So I think that So there's a lot of, but I also I'm interested in art, and I also think it's interesting because these pieces of art also underline what I want to say. What are the cultural ideas about something? Like, for example, I was making a comic about women who take care of men in relationships. And then I wanted to just find pieces of art that show women who take care of men in different ways. So it was really funny because there were so many pictures of this was a very famous Michelangelo picture of Maria holding Jesus, and then he says, it's really nice to just lie here. And then I was making, I don't know if he's known in Finland, this is a Swedish artist, and this is called The Dying Dandy. And I was looking at it, but if you look at it very closely, because there's men and women on this picture, but if you look at it closely, it's only the women who are actually helping this dying dandy, and this man is. So I made this bubble. He's thinking, I'm going to fake a mental breakdown so I don't have to help this. And then I think this one is maybe the absolute most work that really shows this. This is the Frida Kahlo painting when she is sitting holding her very big naked husband, Diego Rivera, and she's sitting in the lap of Mother Nature, who is sitting in the lap of the cosmic mother. So here you really have like different generations and divinities of women who all are taking care of this little man here. So, so it's also a way of underlining this cultural idea of emotional work.
Also have references to the other comic artists? Who?
Yeah, I have, maybe not in this book.
Yes,
there was some. There is one here, I don't know if he's known, Assa Lundqvist, Gunnar Lundqvist, who makes this comic called Assa. Yes, he has got the very famous square. There is two people, one pig and one dog, I think. And the dog says, "Why is the world full of idiots?" And the pig is saying, "What do you mean?" And then there's a sign that says "idiot" to this pig. So this, I was using this, and like paraphrasing this in this one.
And I think there was also Sarah.
Yes, Sarah Janier's, her dog, it was in there too. Yes.
And her comics has been published in Finnish in the book Suffragettien City. And your comic was there too, the same story, which is here, the history of marriage or the relationship.
Yeah.
Okay, I can see the time. Okay, hyvä.
Yeah, I was wondering about the cover of the new book, because it has this like god figure, like kind of, I guess Hindu, heads of three Swedish men. So, can you talk about that and like in relation to cultural appropriation, maybe?
Actually, the joke in this comic is that the Western world is always having like this cultural fantasy about the East that says that in the East they are not as unhappy as we are. They live in the now. They are not anxious about the past. They are not worried about the future. We have gurus like Dalai Lama or Deepak Chopra that that there is this idea that these people are living in the now and the Western culture is not living in the now. But then I think about this and I make this like if this is not like the complete opposite, because the Western culture, if you see what it has done when it comes to climate change, for example, or extinguishing species, we do not at all feel worried about the future or any regrets about the past. We just like are very much like in the now. And like that the leaders of our culture are these corporate men, and they are like they should be treated like spiritual leaders, because they don't even I mean, they say that there is nothing to worry about. Like they are more enlightened than Dalai Lama. So Dalai Lama is just crap if you compare to these men. So why don't we call them? Why don't we build ashrams for them? Why don't we worship them like gods? Why don't hippies go to their houses in Switzerland and start a cult? So this is the joke that this picture refers to. Yeah.
Anyone? Now is your chance. Raju.
What are you working on next?
I'm working on something, but it will not be. It's very much like in the beginning, so I don't really have anything to say about it now. But there will come some more, but not. Maybe in 2 years or something.
Do you still publish like short stories in Galago? Because I think that I have seen like from the previous books. Sometimes I saw some of the stories.
Yeah, I haven't. I tend to make like longer and longer stories. So now some of this have been published in Galago, but I don't think so, because I tend to make like 40 pages now. I can't make shorts anymore. I don't know why.
And we just have to wait.
It's like yeah.
In one of the stories, you had this note in the end that, oh my God, this ended up to be really, really long comic.
Yes. Yes.
It's a funny, even when you're talking about serious things like this, you are like talking to a friend when you are doing your comics, and I think that's really funny to read or something like. What was I talking about, or something like that in the middle of the story. So I think that's what, like when you're talking to someone, and that's the way people are talking actually. Anyone? I think we are running out of time somewhere soon, but one thing I want to thank you, that you in the comic you explained why I don't like this Gang of Four comedy shows, because I just had this feeling that I don't like, and this Gang of Four are the four comedy guys. Charlie Sheen, Ray Romano, Jerry Seinfeld, and Tim
Allen. Yeah, these are like the four best paid, highest paid comics, from yeah. It starts with, so they have been like the highest paid the last years. Yes.
Yeah,
and you don't like them.
Yeah, because when I see the shows, Charlie Sheen, it was especially in the, what is it English in the show called?
2.5 Men.
Yeah, I don't know what it's in English. But every time I saw these, I'm like, this is there's something wrong, or of course in that show I know what's wrong, but then I don't like, if you go look, see the sign, feel like, okay, this is kind of funny, but it's not like, but it's So if you have the same feeling, you should read this and you understand what.
Have a scientific explanation.
Yes, scientific explanation for this. So now I know. And you can buy these books here.
Täältä on saatavilla kirja.
And I think we are running out of time. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Maybe my things.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much.